topic for today is actually a very big one, and it's one which is firmly on our hearts as Adventists and as people who are actually just operating in the world. And it's been on my heart to share the specific details as much as we know about the end of time. It's a topic which is more and more relevant the more we go into the future. It's a topic which God has given us information about, and it really is important for us to get as much knowledge and motivation from it as possible. So it's actually two sections to this particular topic. Part of it will be tonight, and the rest of it tomorrow evening. So we'd like you to join us for both, because I'll only be covering a part of it tonight and the rest of it tomorrow. I've broken it up into 6 particular specific topics or sections. The first is to actually believe in it. The whole matter of the end of time has dragged on since Adam and Eve sinned, and it might have got a bit jaded. It might have been thrown into a level of skepticism. So we want to touch on the fact that we need to believe in it and some of the reasons why we can believe in it. Then the second one will be where we get to know about it. What are the details? How do we actually know what's going to happen, if it's possible to know what's going to happen? And thirdly, how do we prepare for it? Then fourthly is an unexpected topic maybe, but it's that we need to expect it. And in preparing for it, we need to be ready for it. And then some of us are going to experience it. I believe that and hope that all of us will still be living when this happens. I believe it will happen in the very near future. And then, of course, live beyond it. So that's the wonderful, glorious elements of how what we're actually hoping for and believing. There's a lot of words in my slides. I'm sorry for that. It's something which I thought I'd rather share the text of it with you than narrate through it. And these slides are available if you want to look at it a bit further. But the whole thing about believing in something is that you have a basis of belief. You have the basis of fact, you have the basis of proof, and God is a God who actually operates on that basis. So many people actually say, why do you believe in the Bible? You know, what gives you the right to believe in the Bible? Why don't you believe in something else? And sorry, I just want to do something here quickly. Yeah, it is recording. Sorry, Cher's just telling me to record, and I think it is recording. Frank, if you don't mind, could you just check if it is in fact recording? Yeah, it does seem to be recording. Okay, so as I was saying, God actually wants us to believe in what he tells us and to have a factual basis. A lot of people say that faith is believing in things that don't exist, and we're fooling ourselves. But faith is based on, and especially in the Bible, is based on Bible prophecy. So there's an interesting fact. There are over 2,500 prophetic details captured by 40 authors across the Bible. And most of them are about Jesus. And most of them, many of them, have been fulfilled to the T, and others are still to be fulfilled. But that kind of basis, where, as Nebuchadnezzar said to Daniel, and actually just believed at the moment Daniel actually explained that dream, for starters, was that there is a God in heaven. There must be. No one knows the future to the extent of detail, or on any extent, as has been revealed in the Bible. There have been various attempts by Satan and his crew to predict the future, and we know about some of those. But here we get infallible proof. So as I say, the record of prophecies fulfilled actually gives a total assurance of the existence of God, and the fact that the Bible is God's word, and assurance in its messages, and confidence in the prophecies that still lie ahead. The end of time was expected since the beginning of time. When Adam and Eve sinned and God said there will be someone who will have his heel bruised, but he will crush the head of Satan, it's recorded that Adam and Eve actually expected their next child to be that particular fulfillment of that prophecy. So the fact of the end of time has actually been there since the beginning of time. And more so when Jesus arrived and beyond. The apostles believed that Jesus would be coming imminently. So what is the end of time? It's actually a specific concept that this era of life on earth will end abruptly, and it will give way to a completely different era for everybody. We've been around on this planet for so long that this era is almost normal, and nothing seems to be changing that much to give us the idea that it will end abruptly. But this is what we're talking about this evening. One of the insidious things that Satan has brought about, and through philosophy, secular philosophy, and various other influences, truth has actually virtually disappeared. The concept that there is an absolute truth is actually offensive these days. And people will tell you, you believe what you want to, I believe what I want to, and that seems to be okay. But it can't be okay, because truth is truth, and it has to be absolute. We can't believe that gravity exists on one part of the world and it doesn't exist in another part of the world. And as much as physical truths exist, the physical laws, so do the actual laws of the stream of time, the cosmic battle, and all of this. The interesting thing, and thanks to Bernard for asking me the question, was I actually was a firm believer in the fact that there were many ways to God, and all of the different religions and all of the different methods of explaining the world and so on were valid. And my belief was such that I truly believed that it doesn't really matter. The detail of what you believe doesn't really matter. But my upbringing and my time studying the Bible, and subsequently, and especially spending time with the readings of various writings of various authors, especially my favorite author, Ellen White, has actually really just confirmed that there is one truth. There is, in fact, only one route to salvation, and that is through Jesus. Now, many will be saved didn't even know about Jesus, but the fact is that his death has opened the door for everyone to be saved. So the interesting thing is that those people who believe in evolution and non-theistic people, the whole concept of the end of time is foreign. And that's why you get concerted efforts to create habitation on Mars. You get concerted efforts and scary efforts to reduce the population of the world. And these people are actually bent on the fact that it's their prerogative to preserve human life as long as possible. But what the Bible teaches is true for one group and true for every other group, because reality actually reveals itself in universal physical facts that happen visibly, have a tangible effect, and that are experienced by millions of people all over the world. We've just felt that since the beginning of last year. When COVID came about, there were all sorts of theories about it. There were people who didn't believe it existed. And then the reality kicked in. Sure, the fact that not that many people have died and so on is true. But the fact is, the whole world went into a reaction of lockdown, of quarantine, limitation of movement, loss of income, economic decrease, and collapse of businesses and individuals. Those were real and are real, and it's physically affecting everybody. And I believe that COVID was actually and is actually just a sort of a practice session proving that the whole world, every single country, everybody in every single country can be made to behave in a certain way and to take the consequences of a certain way. So what I'm establishing here in this first part of it is that we can and must and should believe that there are in fact cosmic forces, there are in fact, or there is in fact information about things that are going to happen that will bring about the end of time. It's not, I'm laying a basis for the fact that it's okay to believe in things like that. I had a very interesting conversation with a good old friend of mine, old by long ago, in Cape Town when I was down there last week. She and I chatted to him. And once again, this thing of intellectual integrity kicked in, and I remembered it and conveyed it to him. And the thing is that if you're a questioner and you question truth, you've got to be open to digging for the answers and accepting the answers when you get them. So this is what I was trying to get across in that first section. The second section of believe in it is actually the significance of signs. So there are many signs of the second coming of Christ, and these signs have been part of what we've seen and looking for. And the signs actually have some significant relevance in many ways. Firstly, you know, I think we all experience this. Yesterday was sort of okay and very similar to the day before, and this year so far has been similar to the years before. And it's quite possible, and it often happens, that we forget about the cosmic reality, the reality of good and evil, the reality of sin and Satan and God and so on. So these signs actually help us to keep our eyes focused on that cosmic reality and the fact that we have a prospect of a new life free of sin and its consequences. So often we just get used to the normalcy of sin. But the signs keep our hopes alive. They keep our eyes open. Secondly, the signs encourage us to fulfill our mission. When we see the signs of the end of time, we are concerned about our loved ones. We're concerned about people that would be lost if they did not know about these things. And we become more and more aware and focused on the fact that we've got a mission on earth, and that is to share the gospel. So the whole thing about this is that we don't know all the details of what's going to happen. And this is actually one of the words of caution from Ellen White. She actually says, don't speculate about what you don't know. Acknowledge that you don't know all the details. And as we get closer to the end, God will reveal to us essential things. Because we'll be tempted to read boogeymen around the corner and create unnatural excitement. And if one actually shares the fact that this means this and that means that, we find that we don't really live a properly balanced life in Christ, but we live on sensationalism. And when we share that sensationalism with others and they then see that it doesn't really pan out and come true, they lose faith in us and in God. So it's a word of caution here that one should be careful when one thinks about and shares detail about the end of time, because these specific little signs don't necessarily gel together in the big picture of things. However, on the side here, I just want to mention this, and it's a bit of a sad and really a bit of a scary thing. But we do need to be mindful of our personal season of life. And for us, the end of time might end for us personally sooner than we think. An interesting question. Would you live differently if you knew you would die in 2 years' time? If you knew you died in 5 years' time, 30 years' time? I think it would influence us in the way that we behave and act, but it shouldn't, because the fact is that, and this is what I'd like us to come away with in this Believe in It section of the discussion, and that is that our main purpose in life is to prepare for the next life. People have often accused Christians of not really being engaged on the planet the way they should be. And sometimes we haven't been. But we, definitely the Lord, is only really interested in your eternal life. What you achieve on earth is great and important in terms of how you live your life, how you care for your children and your environment. But the main thing is to go forward into eternity. So let's talk about knowing about the signs and the end of time. The signs have always been with us, actually. Jesus, when he was asked, what is the sign? What are the signs of the end of the age? He mentioned things like wars, earthquakes, famines, and there have been many of those from the beginning of the Christian age. There have been false messiahs. Palestine was in fact, attacked and under siege in AD 70. There have been rumors of wars through the AD 60s, and these are years that were close soon after Jesus died. Many of the apostles were actually alive in this era, and they believed that they were going through the last days. If you read some of these references, which we don't have time for now, it's not for nothing that they believed that because of all these things that were happening, the end of the age might be imminent. Sadly, it could have been that the world actually had already come to its end. And, one can't speculate about that too much, but Paul and some of the apostles believed that. Ellen White made mention of that. So we'll sort of park that for now, the fact that the signs have been with us. But these are the signs of evil, of Satan exercising his power, and but God has his clock ticking, and he knows and plans. Firstly, for the salvation of anybody and everybody that comes to him, and secondly, he has his big plans, which, as we saw in the story of Daniel's prophecies, had their times and their seasons and the effects they had. So we rest that with him. The fact, though, is that the New Testament descriptions of the final days are actually really quite something. In Revelation, it's spoken about masses and millions of people dying. It talks about rivers and seas turning to blood. It talks about the earth getting physically hot. It talks about nations getting angry and confused, and the world seriously divided over issues of faith. And then physically, it talks about things that happen in the sky and on earth. Storms and disasters become more severe. And this is actually what's going to be one of the driving forces to what I'm going to talk about in a minute. So in Revelation as well, it talks about the angels holding back the winds of strife, and the fact that those winds will actually be released, and that direct demonic intervention will happen on earth. And it talks about, social unrest and contempt for faith and so on. And these are some of the things that we're beginning to see as escalating into the world history right now. Now, we, as Adventists, and I make no apology for the fact that we are students of the Bible, deep students of the Bible. We have had as our founders people like Ellen White and her husband and a group of people there who deeply studied the Bible. We also have someone who we refer to in our studies as an inspired writer and of a wide range of topics. And because of her writings, we have a great confidence in her contribution. So she writes also about some of the end time events. And these are some of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight and into tomorrow evening. So they're actually a sequence of occurrences, specific things that happen, specific forces that actually join together, and various things that are come up about as a result of their joining together. And I've actually named or listed a couple of them. Now, these are some of the things that face us into the future, looking forward from where we are now. So one of the things mentioned is that there'll be a great return to a religious focus, and there'll be a union of the various religious forces and the spiritual forces, spiritualism and some of the other belief systems that don't necessarily tie in with the Christian forces. Because one asks the questions, okay, it's fine to talk about Christianity and Islam and Buddhism and all of that, but they are very disparate, and they actually, it's difficult to see how some of these mindsets will come together. But as we explore a little bit now, we'll see some of those forces. So there'll be some form of union there. And then we see some form of excitement and focus. And, we've already seen a bit of that through the pandemic we've just been through, where people were asking questions like, they sensed a situation bigger than and more significant than just the normal run-of-the-mill day-by-day stuff. And people have actually started asking questions about the end of time and what could these things mean. But that will actually gain a new level of excitement, and we'll find that churches and movements and people who are thinking and asking questions will actually gain in number, and that whole series of events or activities will actually culminate and drive forward into the future. Now, many people have different ideas of how the world will end, and the whole study of that is called eschatology. Our eschatology in our church and through our studies and writings and so on, actually we believe that the most significant trigger event will be when the USA actually declares a Sunday law which applies to the whole country. So by that we mean that this will be a law enforcing the Sunday as the so-called day of rest, and that law will be a civil law, where if you don't obey it, you will have the same reaction from the physical law system, where it will be a criminal act. It will have civil consequences on you, where you'd be fined or imprisoned or worse. So this is a very significant thing that we believe will happen. Now, a lot of people look at that with a bit of incredulity and say, how on earth can that be possible? But already there are many Sunday laws in many different countries, and quite a few of the federal states of the USA already have Sunday laws of the nature that I've just said, but it's actually not really enacted yet, and we'll see an escalation in this particular topic, which will bring that about. After that, there will be various developments which we'll explore tomorrow evening. And those are specific elements like the latter rain and the mark of the beast and all of those elements. And then we'll see a general close of probation. So this refers to a verse in Revelation, which I'll talk about tomorrow night as well, which is where God declares those that are righteous, let them be righteous still, and those that are not righteous, let them be evil still. And that is almost like a call to a particular two groups of people, clearly defined by what they've chosen in terms of their relationship with God. Then we see a time of trouble, such as there never was before. I find it quite interesting that this time of trouble is after the close of probation. And we'll look at that in a little more detail. And then comes the glorious event upon which our church is named, and which is in the hearts of all believers of Jesus, that he will physically come to the earth again and fetch us, and we be with him for eternity. There is the third coming of Christ, which we'll look at briefly. And that is when he comes back after the 1,000 years, the millennium, back to actually just sort out this issue of sin and the final destruction of those who so sadly have not accepted the love of God and whose lives will be terminated forever. So I just want to go into the knowing about it, and let's just look at the religious and spiritualism union together with various governments and so on. You know, in Daniel came about one of the most amazing prophecies, which is actually a 2,300-year prophecy. It's called day, but 1 day is equivalent to a year. And this prophecy actually was so accurate in its fulfillment. As you can see, the decree, the baptism of Jesus, crucifixion, and so on. But part of this prophecy was actually the fact that a certain dominant power would come into being, and would actually be the dominant power for 1,260 years. Now, something that changed dynamically and physically according to God's law was around the fourth commandment, where that particular commandment was specifically changed. But let's just focus on this very quickly. For all of those years, the Roman Catholic Church dominated the Christian arena for those years. And then in 1517, Martin Luther was one of the people. He was one of many, but he's the most well-known one, where he started pushing back against what really was total heresy. I mean, the Catholic Church was actually selling pardons for sin, and even got to the point where you could be buying a pardon for a sin you were going to commit in the future. And that's where a breakaway of Protestants broke away from the Catholic Church. And there were these two very different bodies which believed very differently. Now, one of the things that we believe is that those powers will come back together. And in recent years, Pope Francis has in fact been drawing all religions together and government powers as well. And we can see some of the forces coming into alignment, where we will find that there are in fact, or there is in fact a union which is actually going to lay the foundation for the momentum that's needed to bring about the changes to the end of time. So there are a lot of things happening. There are references to and articles produced and statements being made and forces coming into play. But again, as I said earlier this evening, let's not be interpreting everything in all sorts of detail, but let's keep our eye on the ball and just see and be aware that this particular union is something that is leading towards the next step. We then hear about, from Ellen White as well, that there'll be an excitement in some of the churches. And this excitement will bring them under satanic control. The excitement spreads to other churches. And this will be sort of driven by the fact that more and more people are beginning to question what's happening in the world and seeing that there are bigger forces than just what atheists believe and so on. The excitement also is driven by the fact that there are increased things happening physically on Earth. We saw a pandemic come through that sort of shook the world in a way like never before. There'll be more of those. We've also seen great fires and disasters of floods and earthquakes. But when these things start happening more often and increasing in intensity, we're going to find that people are literally shaken into a realization that there's something else going on, different to what has happened before. And this sort of awareness will bring about that kind of excitement, which either excites them into their own solution of this problem, or excites people like us into a realization that Jesus is coming soon. So carrying on with the topic of knowing about it, I just want to focus very quickly on the fact that our lives and livelihoods are highly subject to political and social and religious forces, which are pivotal to bringing about the time of the end. There are decades of violation of the 10 Commandments by almost everybody that causes immorality and irresponsibility, crime, bloodshed. And these evil, or the escalation of evil in the world, is going to make churches and various organizations cry out and say, there is a God. We really have to deal with these things, because we believe that our behavior in the past has actually caused him to be wrathful, and these things are happening because God is angry with us. This is one of the big things with Satan, that he wants to have us believe the wrong thing about God. He wants us to believe that God is actually out to damage and destroy. And it's this kind of realization that there's this wrathful God that needs to be appeased, and we have to now start obeying the law. And this is where the Sunday law thing will come from. But why a Sunday law in the first place? And many of us know this, but in the 10 Commandments, the fourth commandment speaks about keeping the Sabbath holy. The seventh day of the week has been established by God in creation, or at creation, as a day of rest. God wanted two things to happen. The one was that he wants to spend time with us every week, and time that is uninterrupted by what our normal run-of-the-mill day is all about, but it's time that he wants to spend with us, and we want to spend with him in fellowship and breaking away from the cares of the world. The second reason that God invented the Sabbath and the day of rest was one which we actually enjoy, and that is just taking a physical rest, easing your mind, your concerns, breaking away from everything that takes up our time. And I must say that we feel refreshed to start a new week. And being out in the world all those many years, I in particular felt the difference in keeping the Sabbath, because you do get that spark of energy that kicks you into a new week, which is really quite wonderful. So what happened then? Why is it a Sunday now? There are various explanations that people come up with which don't really hang together. But here's a fact that does sort of explain it. There's a certain date in March in the year 321 AD when the Roman Emperor Constantine, and he was the Roman Emperor, remember that, became a Christian. He declared by a civil decree that Sunday would be a day of rest from labor. In other words, here was somebody, a human being, that actually made a declaration around changing an element of the Ten Commandments. This is another study altogether, which we can do for those of you who want to. But the fact about this is that when this was happened in 321 AD, as many hundreds of years ago, Sunday became the de facto day of rest for virtually all Christians on earth. And as our name shows by the fact that we are Seventh-day Adventists, meaning that we are people who worship on a Sabbath, the seventh day, Saturday, and we look forward to the second coming of Jesus, that actually identifies us as a group of believers with these particular characteristics. But the point I'm trying to make is that here is is coming a civil law that will actually try and force people to actually disobey God in a very specific civil law basis, as I said earlier. So that is where I actually want to that's where I want to stop for this evening.